Hello, you beautiful individuals. Welcome back to League Unlock. We are looking ahead to the quarterfinal matchups in the LCS, and that 3-6 matchup is Counterlogic Gaming versus OpTic. And you know, CLG, they looked prime and ready for that playoff bye, but of course, they go 1-2 over the final day. They lose the tiebreaker to C9. They end up being third. They got to play in that quarterfinal. No bye to the semifinals. And for OpTic, it was a journey getting to playoffs. They had to play 4 games on the final week of action. Started 0-2, then won 2 in a row to just barely get that final playoff spot. So in big contrast to the TSM versus Clutch series, CLG should be huge favorites. Maybe not huge, big favorites in this matchup as the higher seed because they were so close to that bye. And across pretty much the entire season, they have been consistently one of the top 3 teams in all of North America. OpTic, I mean, they started great. They started 4-0, but they have had some huge slumps throughout the entire middle of the regular season. But the numbers on paper are actually pretty even in a lot of categories for them. Both teams proactive in that early game. Obviously, Crown is extra important in that OpTic lineup and kind of their sole win condition in a lot of these games. Power of Evil, the main storyline here is, of course, PoE going up against his former squad. And it's just very interesting. OpTic, for the first time, make playoffs without Power of Evil in their lineup. And Power of Evil makes playoffs for the first time in the very same split on CLG. And of course, they go head to head. The regular season series went 1-1. They played way early on. Back in week 2 was their first game, and that's when OpTic was jumping out to their 4-0 start. And CLG, really the first 2 to 3 weeks is when they were most suspect, and you weren't actually sure if they were going to be close to a playoff team. Weeks 3 and onwards is when they really started showcasing that they are legit, they are for real, and they are a top 3 team in North America. So again, much like Clutch and TSM, not taking too much into that regular season head-to-head. I will say that the second game was actually quite back and forth, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a few of these games come down to basically one team fight, even though I expect CLG should win this series. They've just, across the entirety of the regular season, looked so much better, and we will get to those lane-by-lane matchups to really see who has the main advantage. But OpTic, you got to give credit to them when it was absolutely down to the nitty-gritty and they needed to be clutch. They did it in week 9, whereas CLG did not do that. But you've got to feel like they do not like the taste that was left in their mouth after a 1-2 week 9, so they will definitely be coming fired up for playoffs. It's been a long time since CLG has been here. I mean, OpTic, it's the first time ever, but they haven't existed quite as long as Counterlogic Gaming. So, I mean, a year and a half or 2.5 years, basically, you got to be pretty excited if you're a CLG fan to be back into these playoffs. And if we are looking lane by lane, why is CLG big favorites in this one? Well, if you start in the top lane, the secret recipe to success for Counterlogic Gaming against OpTic is, maybe, just maybe, we should ban Aatrox because Dokla is very comfortable on that champion, and we've seen him completely dismantle teams like TSM on that pick. We know no matter how hard Riot tries, no matter how many times they nerf the poor guy, he's still going to be there in the meta. He doesn't need to have a revive because his healing is absolutely disgusting. So ban Aatrox and Ruin. Some people maybe felt like he should have been on the all-pro list, and I think he was right outside there in that kind of 4-5 area. He just died too many times. This is kind of what we saw out of him at MSI on Fenerbahce. He had the most solo kills in the LCS, same thing at MSI, but he also had the most deaths in the LCS. So he is just always looking to fight, no matter what the matchup is, even if he's at a deficit. If he has no idea where the opposing jungler is, he's going all in. That's definitely something that OpTic could punish, but you've still got to give the edge to Ruin in that top lane because he has that game-changing potential that we have seen in multiple games for CLG this split, where he has hard carried and completely snowballed the game out of control on something like the Camille. We've only really seen Dokla perform well on Aatrox, so ban it, and it's a very big advantage for CLG in that top lane. When we go to the jungle, it's, look at this, domestic talent for North America. 2 players that are actually from North America. They're not taking up import slots. Wiggly and Meteos. Wiggly was on the All-Pro squad. I think Meteos is the consensus clear-cut 4th best jungler that we've seen. So these guys are very close, and I expect a lot of the early game, as is the same with pretty much every team on the Rift right now. It flows through your junglers, and I think these guys have both played the meta picks, Sylas, Gragas, Sejuani, whatever it is. They've played them both pretty well. This is maybe the closest matchup that we have in this series, and I think it's a very slight edge to Wiggly and CLG, but I think these guys are going to be so close. That's the most interesting matchup for me to follow in this entire series, is going to be in that jungle. But I think Meteos has had some games where you saw him be invisible, particularly during that slump for OpTic. We haven't really seen that at all from Wiggly, so he gets the slight nod in his favor. Mid lane is also obviously a very juicy matchup. PoE going up against his replacement on OpTic, and Crown, I mean, without him playing at the level he did throughout the majority of the split, you're probably looking at least 3 to 4 less wins for OpTic, which, yeah, let me check the math. They're not even close to playoffs without him performing at this level. I think the edge has to go to him over Power of Evil, who had a pretty good split. He is very solid. I think he's in there as a top 5 mid laner in the LCS. This split, really no huge negatives for him. He just hasn't had that pop-off potential that we've necessarily seen from him in splits past, whereas Crown absolutely has that potential. Save for that 1-0-7 Azir game, he's basically had no bad games. Even in a lot of these losses, he was trying so damn hard to carry OpTic across the finish line. He has been a top 3 performing mid laner all split long, no doubt, and he will have to continue to play at that MVP level if OpTic wants any chance against CLG. In the bottom lanes, it's a bit surprising. Stixxay versus Arrow. I mean, part of it is to do with the meta. Most teams aren't playing through the bottom lane because, I mean, the flex picks are what take over on the Rift these days. It's all about your solo lane, top side of the map with your junglers. So no surprise here that the kill share percentage not quite to the same level as we're accustomed to seeing. Usually 80 carries are right around that 30% mark, but both these guys well below that standard, and they're just not the featured guys on their squads. You know, Stixxay has played a few Sona games, so that obviously takes down that number. But when it comes to laning, these guys have actually been pretty solid, pretty decent. Neither of these guys are going to have to put up huge carry performances, I don't think, in this series. I might still, if we're talking specifically 80 carries and marksman going head-to-head, I think Arrow has been a little bit more consistent than Stixxay, and I think his champion pool has a little bit more depth to it, even though we're probably not seeing him play Sona. He always has that Draven that he can fall back on. But when you combine the bottom lanes and bring in their supports, I think the edge goes to CLG because the difference between Biofrost and Big is much bigger than Stixxay versus Arrow. Biofrost has been just an absolute godsend for CLG throughout this entire split. We know he likes playing not Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is actually his most underwhelming champion. He likes playing these control mages or these engaged champions like a Rakan. Big has 7 games of Nautilus, which is absolutely insane to play that much of one champion, and Biofrost hasn't touched that champion at all. So if the 2v2 we're looking at as a laning phase core and as a team together, then it goes to CLG. Just 80 carries, you give the edge to OpTic, but I think CLG comes away with this one, maybe 3-1. There'll be some close games, but CLG will prove that they are the better team here in Summer Split and begin their long journey if they want to make Worlds in 2019.